Well, welcome back to another episode of The Reality Halfway House. Well, the earth is shaking and quaking, prophecies being fulfilled. We're going to get into it. We are caught between worlds. This is The Reality Halfway House. I'm your host, Jones Nelson. Well, yesterday, there was a big earthquake. If you... have been not following the news. August the 10th, according to CNN, death toll rises to 132 in Columbia Earthquake Association says. The growing death toll, they're saying 570 were injured as a result of a 7.4 earthquake that struck Western Colombia. According to the Colombian Association of Capital Cities, they said that the epicenter was actually about... let's see, where did they say? It was outside of, I was just looking at it just a second ago, about 150 miles west of Bogota. The epicenter was in San Jose del Palmar in an underdeveloped area of Western Colombia. Again, they're still kind of digging through the rubble. They said it was felt all around that area, and they obviously have declared a national disaster and emergency. It's getting weirder out there. You know, I was just going on and on about, being very mindful of, using ChatGPT and other things like that. But the thing is, there's so much information out there. I've started to kind of lean on a little bit more in the, if you can't beat them, join them kind of a camp. I still write my own material, but it's one of those things where I was combing through it today, having them kind of go through and do a correlation between the 2 E's prophecy by Kim Klement that he put out in, I believe it was 2014, and all of the earthquakes that keep coming at us. And so I had him kind of run some numbers all the way from just 25 through today. And obviously... we had the big one in March 28th of 2025 in Myanmar. If you'll remember, that was a 7.7 earthquake that struck. It was at a 10 kilometer depth. Earlier on in 2025, you had the earthquake. They said there was roughly 4,000 detected earthquakes to about 80,000 over the span of the Santorini and Amagos near Greece. There was just a swarm of them. In other words, we're seeing increased amount of that earthquake activity. And if you know Kim Klement, I'm not going to play the prophecy because it's just all over the place. You can Google Kim Klement 2 E's prophecy or Strange July, Hypnotic November. I've heard the prophecy. Bo Pony, if you know who Bo Pony is, he's a big advocate of silver and gold and the wealth transfer and so forth. That's kind of his shtick. He's an analyst of time. And I was just out driving. If you're watching this episode, you'll see that I'm a shirt and tie. I just got back in. I was just discussing it yesterday. I had an interview for the back in finance world. Good God help me. But I was listening to them talking about this, and it occurred to me that it was probably worth sitting down to discuss this a little bit, because Kim Klement is a prophet I had not even heard of until probably the last 3 or 4 years. Where you started to see more and more of the things that he had discussed previously, even like 10, 12 years ago, that are starting to, really kind of show themselves in the landscape today. And, I had a comment yesterday on one of the videos that I put out, and kind of a snippet. I was talking about God, God really stamps, his purpose on your life, and et cetera, et cetera. I forget exactly, kind of where I went with it. But somebody commented on one of the videos and said, we're all done with God, sir. So if you're listening out there, you may be done with God, but God is definitely not done with you. I may be, a lot of things. I don't claim to be the most intelligent guy that was ever walked the face of the earth. But I will tell you, if more than anything else, over the last 5-10 years, my faith has grown immensely, just because I think we're seeing more and more of this world building towards kind of this prophetic end. If you go back to Matthew 24, and I'm just reading this out of the Bible Gateway, but you can go read it for yourself. Matthew 24, if you haven't read just that whole chapter in a while, It is definitely one of the more telling chapters in the book of Matthew, not trying to take anything out of context necessarily, but the Matthew 24 book, if you really want a good idea of kind of what's going on, read the book of Daniel, read Matthew 24, and then also go through and read the book of Revelations. I mean, and you will see very quickly, kind of what's piecing together. But Matthew 24, 6 through 8 says, "And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars." Definitely seeing that today. "See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. And these are but the beginning of birth pains." Okay, so that's out of Matthew 24. If you go through and read the rest of it, Jesus really kind of paints a picture of kind of what we can expect during this time. Well, we see the earthquakes like we were just talking about. What was it, 5 to 80,000 earthquake just clusters in these areas? It's getting to the point to where you can't ignore it anymore. You can't just go through and say, okay, well, this is strange. Look, because there's so much happening. It can't just be a piece in the 5 o'clock news. We have to start, I think, kind of paying attention. And it's easy to go through and to try to connect dots that aren't there. I'm not trying to suggest that there's not. It's important and incumbent upon each of us to form a cogent thought and use our discernment and look into this. However, when we're seeing hurricanes, for example, that go all the way up into North Carolina from the Gulf, not from the Atlantic Ocean, but from the Gulf. Like when you start to see exorbitant flooding in Texas, when you're seeing heat waves and snow and all this other kind of things that are completely out of sorts, I think we have to start putting our thinking caps on. And then, yeah, you can say, well, it's El Nino. They've been talking about it's El Nino. Well, maybe so. But, I mean, we see right here that things are going to start getting weird in Matthew 24, right? And it's just exacerbated by the fact that we see the increase in earthquakes. I don't have the article right up in front of me because I just got in just a minute. It was like a 2.5 hour drive down there and back, so 5 hours in the car. And I was like, I got to get this off my head or out of my head. So they have been talking about the big one coming out of California for years. I mean, George Strait wrote that famous song, "I've got oceanfront property in Arizona." Because when the big one comes, I'll have beachfront property here, right? Like California is going to get wiped off the map. But they're also talking about the super volcano that's underneath Yellowstone, and if that puppy blows, there may not even be any humanity left after that one because of the super volcanic nature of that. Again, I'm just telling you about it. You can go look it up for yourself. But suffice it to say, is most people I would submit to you that are listening to this are probably in the know on at least some of this. I think the purpose of this conversation is really more to get you thinking. It's like, okay, well, wait a minute. If things are building and increasing in veracity, right, like an intensity, we're seeing it across the world. It's the building. It's the building of something. It's the beginning, like it says in verse 8 there of Matthew 24, all of these are but the beginning of birth pains. And if you have kids, and I have two, before the baby comes, there's a lot of contractions. And those contractions, it'll be intense for a second, and then it'll let off, and you get a little bit of time. And then the contraction will come in, and it'll let off, and then they build in intensity, and they get closer and closer together until finally the cervix is dilated enough and it's time for the baby to come out. I think that you see this also when you look in the Old Testament, when you look at Moses, right? So Moses came and told Pharaoh, hey, dude, you need to let my people go. Let God's people go. And Pharaoh said, no. Well, enter first contraction. Let my people go, enter second contraction, and so on and so forth, right? And we see that illustrated in Scripture there. And then eventually he's finally like, okay, you can go. And then he chases him down, right? We see the Red Sea moment. We see God's hand move. And at the end of the day, it's a process, right? And I think we're seeing that now. And I was just listening to a broadcast just a little bit ago with Nino Rodriguez, Nino's Corner. If you've never seen that show, it's a great podcast. I follow his show all the time. I like him, just in case you've never heard of him, because he has a very wide variety of guests that he brings on his shows. He's not so pigeonholed in the quote-unquote proverbial truther movement. You know what I mean? There's so many of these that are super far right, and it's like they get so like entrenched and, well, that's not what my preacher said, so I'm not going to, I can't even entertain the thought. Man, there's a lot of things that I used to entertain or not entertain, but that I don't think that we can ignore anymore. And we'll have future shows on that. But I like him. But just be prepared if you head that direction, that he has on a lot of that, political kind of stuff, which, I delve into that a little bit. I try to be a little bit more esoteric than that, just because I think that with where we're at in this, whatever it is, movie, that so many people like to affectionately refer, I think we're at the point where the political side of things is going to start to disintegrate. Even Bo Pony, who was on the show with Nino today, was talking about the wealth transfer, and he's talking about the 2 E's prophecy, which, by the way, we'll get to that here in just a second, because this is kind of what made me think of it. And he's played it 400 times, but he's always upbeat and like, hey man, let's trust in God. He's got this. To today, he's like, man, I'm so sick of this movie, man. I'm sick of waking up every single morning, and it's Groundhog Day, and we're all in the same situation. I mean, we're all in that boat right now. Like I've said 1,000 times on my, short podcast here, that if somebody tells me to get your popcorn one more time, it's like, dude, I'm so done with popcorn. I don't even care how the movie ends anymore. It's like I've had to pee for like 30 minutes. It's like I'm just gonna get up. And when I'm done, I'm leaving. I'm leaving the theater. It's like it makes me want to just completely like sign off. I mean, I'm wearing a shirt and tie. I swore I would never do that again. I gave away all my suits. I had like expensive suits with French cuff shirts and cufflinks and so forth when I used to manage money, and I gave them all away to these kids at the kids with this church program, a buddy of mine's church. I mean, like thousands of dollars worth of suits I just gave away. Swore I would never wear them again. But I'm so done with this damn movie. I'm just like, you know what? I don't know when it's going to end. I don't know what God's agenda is. And I'm not mad at God. I mean, I'm not mad at God at all. God is playing out and doing what God is going to do. And there's nothing that I can say or do that's going to change his mind. He's on a completely different level. It's like my kids don't understand why I don't let them eat ice cream for breakfast and play video games all day. Like they just look at me like I'm cruel, and they don't understand my logic or reasoning behind it. I'm like, well, I don't want you to like lose all of your teeth, gain 400 pounds, and never, like learn how to do anything because you're just playing video games and ice cream all day. They don't understand it. Like I want the movie to be over yesterday. I want, as the prophets have been saying, the health and the wealth transfer. It's like, gosh, that sounds amazing. But that being said, that's ice cream and video games for me in the grand scheme of things. When we know that suffering is important to growth and development. If you want big, strong muscles, you have to suffer in the gym. You have to put the Oreos down and eat the broccoli. I mean, that's just part of it, man. Suffering is part of how we are made. It is the pain that makes you, right? So getting back, so my point to all of that was Bo is starting to get jaded. Like the most optimistic people that have been out there for the last several years are starting to get exhausted, tired, and jaded. I never thought I would go back to the stupid finance industry again, right? I never thought, but because the world keeps getting progressively worse and things get more and more expensive, we just talked about that a little bit yesterday. It's like I'm having to force myself to go back into the lion's den, so to speak, just to be able to go through and to navigate and survive. And I love to work. Please don't miss me. I can just say, well, he's just lazy, just wants to sit there and play guitar all day. No, man, I love to work. I'm not particularly fond of the finance industry, but I love to work. But I think in the meantime, since we don't know, I mean, Jesus even said, he's like, look, they'll be laughing and how does he? So here, it's just a beautiful thing. The beautiful thing about the internet, they'll be. Hold on, let me give you the exact verse. Here we go. See, this is great. This is out of Matthew. Yeah, actually, again, out of Matthew 24. I knew it was in there somewhere, but I just couldn't remember. So Matthew 24 is one of those that if you haven't read it in a minute, go back and read it. This is Matthew 24:38. It says, "For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark." In other words, everybody was just living their lives before God decided to make it rain. You know what I mean? And actually, if you get into the story of Noah, which I've read many times, not an expert, but I've just read it many times, it's that God himself is the one who sealed Noah up into the ark. Think about it. It was all God's timing, right? And so everybody was going through and just living their lives. And I'm not trying to say that you should be ignorant and not prepare. I think we need to be very vigilant. This is the whole point of this podcast today, is to just bring awareness to the fact that, yeah, these earthquakes are something that we need to think about. Earthquakes happen all the time. They happen every day. I mean, that's not in and of itself reason to just go through and say, oh, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. But just like God told me the other day, he said, look, a dam doesn't break from that one drop of water itself. If you look back, the dam started cracking and breaking long before that final drop ever broke the dam. The same with the last straw, the last straw that broke the camel's back. It's like he told me, he said, look, the camel started showing signs of wear long before that piece of straw ever hit. Long before, right? The knees start shaking and quaking. And that's what Jesus, I think, is really trying to communicate when he says all these things. When he said, he's like, look, he said, see that you're not alarmed. There's wars and rumors of wars. Gosh, man, I mean, it's been like that for as long as I've been alive, They've got to take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places, and these are all but the beginning of birth pains. That's just the birth pains. Those are the contractions. That's not the straw that breaks the camel's back. That's not the birth. That's the beginning of birth pains. Head over to Revelation where you hear about the birth, right? Like, life is fixing to dramatically change for a lot of us. Is the birth this big event that we're waiting on? Is this birth the parting of the Red Sea or the parting of the Jordan? I mean, pick your poison. Like, what is it? What is this birth? Is it the move of God? Is that what we're waiting on? And is the birth a volcano, a super volcano? Is the birth California falling into the ocean? What is the birth? What is the event? What is this event that everybody keeps talking about? Well, Kim Klement said in his prophecy, and let me pull it back up here. He said, and I had it bookmarked, and I clicked off of it. Dad, burn it. It basically said there are two E's that I see. Yeah, here it is. It was on June 14th, 2014. And he specifically said there are two E's that I see. One E is the word erupt, and the other is earthquake, right? And so he goes on to talk about these eruptions. He says there's a rage. I don't have it in front of me, but I've heard this particular prophecy so many times. There's a rage below the surface of the earth, and then he talks about like these crazy things that will transpire, and that the summertime, there's going to be a strange July, and then many will fall in the fall. And he talks about a hypnotic November, but Christmas, everybody's going to be rejoicing. Now, Bo Polney, he's the analyst of time. He made it sound like this is going to be last year. I, as a financial professional with over 2 decades of experience, thought the market was going to collapse back in 2022. I really did. I thought the market was going to collapse in Q3. And my portfolio looks awful now because I was betting, pretty solidly against it. I'm not telling you what to do with your money. I thought the market was going to fall at that point, and it didn't. And I've lost on that side. And what's funny is that I was like, I swear I'm not going crazy. Like it should have fallen. And I was reading an article the other day, and they were actually talking about how, like, yeah, we actually thought that this was going to occur back in Q3 of 2022. And, and then they go on, and I was just like seeing red. It was like, I've been saying. I've been saying. And then shortly after I started getting into it and placing these trades, Michael Burry, made famous by the book and the movie The Big Short, the guy that won all the money by, basically calling the housing crisis of 2008 before it happened, placed almost identical trade to what I had as well. That doesn't mean that I'm right, because, if he plays the same trade, he's losing too, right? But he was super early on the housing crisis in 2008. Go watch The Big Short if you don't understand that. The point is, we're building to something. This cannot sustain itself. You don't have silver go from $50, which it had never broken $50 in all of history, to breaking $50 and then shooting up to $120 over the course of a couple of weeks earlier this year. You don't have stuff like that happening unless there's some intangibilities. Follow the Japan markets, and you can see very clearly within the Japanese markets that they're in trouble. They own a ton of United States debt, a ton of it, right? And if they need capital, what are they going to do? They're going to sell what they have. Like, if you're in a tough spot, what are you going to do? You're going to sell off some things, right? Like, I've got a wall of guitars back here. If I'm in a tough spot, I'm probably taking one to the pawn shop, right? I don't necessarily want to do that. Or worse, I have to put on the monkey suit and go back into the wonderful world of finance, right? The reality is that nobody knows when God is going to move. Nobody knows, right? I think it'd be awesome if, God could, shoot out an email or update the calendar that we could all check. But like Bo Polney was just talking about earlier today, and I think he makes an excellent point here. He said, God can't reveal, as he said, the kill shot, right? He can't do it. Like, if he had told what he had said, what Bo said earlier was, if he had told the Israelites what was going to happen, then Pharaoh would have never followed them into the Red Sea. If he said, hey, you guys are going to go in there, and then when Pharaoh follows him behind you, I'm going to close it, he would have just stayed. Like, why would you go across? Why would you go across if you knew? Nino was talking earlier about how, and he's been saying for a while, Steve Bannon also came out and said that we're not going to have fall elections. We're not going to have them. And now, I don't know. Obviously that is an incredibly controversial topic, because there's really nothing on the table right now that would suggest that we wouldn't. But that is certainly their opinions. And Nino's been saying that for a long time, and Steve Bannon just came out the other day and said, yeah, I don't think we're going to have them. The thing is, it's a very heated election that's going to be coming up, but there's also a lot of stuff that's building up to it too, right? And so what are we doing? We're eating and drinking and giving in marriage, and we're walking around and doing our things and living our lives, and that's all we can do, really, right? Like, the Israelites were doing what before they left? They were probably making bricks, man, They're probably doing their day-to-day. Over in the land of Goshen. I don't know. That's, as far as I understand, it was business as usual until finally they got the word. It's like, hey guys, let's jet, grab what you can hold, right? And then at that point, they ended up basically looting the Egyptians, and they cleaned up as they were leaving. I guess you could call that reparations for 400 years, right? 400 years of slavery in Egypt. But suffice it to say, is we're all in this same position as well. We're waiting for some big event. We can feel it in our bones. Everybody is sick of this stupid freaking movie. We're so exhausted with it. I'm again, to the point where it's like I've been holding out, and I keep putting out music, and I keep putting out podcasts, and I keep like going through to the point where it's like, okay, the movie's still going. Well, I guess we're going to go back into the lion's den. And it sucks on the one hand. But here's the beautiful part. Just like my kids don't understand why I won't let them, have their ice cream and their video games and TV all the time. And they have to do chores and go to school, and they have responsibilities that they have to fulfill, because I'm trying to grow them up to be to raise them in the way they should go so that when they're older, they will not depart from it, right? They may not understand my logic or my ways there, but ultimately they know, I hope, that deep down that I have their best interest at heart. And I think ultimately that's what we just have to trust. It's like when your dad or your mom was driving at, it's like at night, and you're like, I remember I'd be coming, we'd go to visit my grandma and have dinner at her house, and then we'd be coming home, and it's late, and so we're tired, and it's past our bedtime, and they're driving, and you just fall asleep in the car on the way home because you fully trust them. Man, I've ridden with some friends, and they're driving, and it's like, even though I'm exhausted, I can't sleep because I don't trust them at all. It's like I've got to be vigilant for their sake because they're not watching out for this or that. It's like I've had to tell them to stop like 5 times, But with like your dad or your mom, you feel comfortable enough to fall asleep and trust that they're going to get you there. It may be rocky, and there's still things that could transpire in the course of that, but you have to trust that they're going to get them there. And I'm trying, and I'm not saying that it's the best, and I'm not saying that I'm the best advocate or candidate for this at all, but I'm certainly trying to go through and to trust that God's got this. And not that I'm trying to fall asleep in the back, but I'm trying to make sure that I'm prepared the best way that I can. The only thing I would tell people out there is just be prepared for basically anything. We don't know what this is going to be. We don't know what the proverbial event is going to be. Is it going to be an EMP that knocks out our grid? I don't know. Is it going to be some big earthquake that knocks out the infrastructure, the grid, the fill in the blank? I don't know. Is it going to be a total financial collapse? I mean, one could argue that we're already there. I mean, there's so many things right now pointing to the fact that our nation is so financially unstable. Not even our nation, our world is so financially unstable that, people can't afford to live. I mean, the basic necessities. Like this job, as an example, this job that the interview went well. I was on my second interview, and the money is actually pretty decent. However, to go through and to accept the position with the state of this world right now would require that I would live here and live down there for a minute until we could move. But it's going to be such that because of the circumstances of this environment, right, with the way everything is with inflation and everything else, if offered this position at the salary that they're offering, I may not even be able to accept it, even though it's a decent salary, because of the logistics of just being able to move. And like 10, 15 years ago, wouldn't even have thought twice about it. It's like, okay, cool. We'll make it work because rent and everything else is within the spectrum of being like doable, if that makes any sense whatsoever. We're in a really weird spot. So what I would say is, again, just make sure you're prepared for anything. Make sure you've got a few weeks worth of food and water, a month if you can. The one thing I'd say too is think about those people in your life that, might be an NPC or might not be paying attention to what's going on. And again, you may say I'm all conspiratorial. Look, man, I don't care if nothing's going on. It's good advice to make sure that you have a little put back. That's that old adage, make sure you have enough for a rainy day. What does that mean? It can mean anything. There's a guy on TikTok, I can't remember his name, that basically said that Leviathan and Godzilla is going to come attack the world too. So, I mean, there's that as well. The book of Job is my favorite for a reason, because God really gets to cook, but man, he really paints a pretty gnarly picture of Leviathan. And you want to see something else too, read the book of Jasher. When he goes through, man, read the book of Jasher and read the Moses account and the plagues. You'll see a very, very different picture from what you see in the canonized version of the scripture. Trust me, go check it out. Put your own eyes on it. It's very interesting because it kind of alludes to that fact as well. So you should be prepared for anything. We're already in such a weird spot financially, just as a nation, as a world, that it makes it tough to go through and say, well, gosh, I can't afford to do anything. Well, here's the thing I would say to that. Because there's this question, I think, and this point comes up a lot. especially when people are talking about health and wealth transfers and how do I prepare? Because you get a lot of people saying, hey, you should buy gold, you should buy silver, you should buy foreign currencies, you should buy this, you should buy that. And again, I was a financial advisor for a long time. And so for the one thing I would say to that, and I'm not giving financial advice, is I think you need to understand that you need to prepare the best way you can within your current means. I don't think that you should go out and go bananas. I don't think you should be running up credit card debt. I don't think you should be selling your car and doing all this other kind of stuff. Unless God is specifically leading you in that direction, I think you need to use reason, and I think you need to make sure that you're positioning yourself in such a way that you are ready. So think of it like this. Picture yourself as an Israelite, okay? You see these plagues going on, right? And you know for a fact that Moses is in there fighting, because when he went in there and told Pharaoh to let my people go, there was retribution. Pharaoh came back and said, you know what, fine. You want to go through and you want to act like this? Then all these bricks you're making, I'm taking the straw away, which means I'm making your life harder on you. So this slavery that you're already in, now it's harder. How do you like that? So they knew that Moses was in there like trying to get them freed. And it was irritating to a lot of them because they're like, dude, you're making it worse. What are you doing? You're making it worse. But think about that for just a second. As those plagues started coming, the cracks in the dam started forming, the camel's knees started to quake. You have to think there were those that had been around and had paid attention to the stories and had understood that, hey, there was a time before this when we were actually better off. And then there were those that were born into the slavery that didn't know anything about it, and they didn't care. I mean, I think they said there's an estimate of, I think it was like 2 million people is what they estimate was about in that group. And I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me, but I want to say that's what sounds right. And so if there were 2 million people, you're going to have all kinds within that. You're going to have a spectrum. You're going to have those that understood that they came from a place where they walked with God, right? If you read the book of Deuteronomy, it said that Jacob was Yahweh's special possession. If you actually go back and read it, Deuteronomy, was it 32, 7 through 8, something like that? Don't quote me, but somewhere in there. So if that's the case, and the Israelites, right, the tribes of Israel came from Jacob, then, they're part of a special possession, yeah? So you have to understand, some of them understood where they came from, and a lot of them just, were there. They're like, I'm just here to make the bricks, man. Go home. I'm just doing my 8 and skate. I'm just going to go and order a pizza tonight, and drink beer on the couch while I watch fill in the blank, Hunger Games. I don't know, fill in the blank. And so at the end of the day, you had people that were just basically doing their corporate job, their blue-collar job every day, and then you had others that were more awake, and there's this gradient. Well, as each one of those plagues hit, think of those as ripples going through and waking people up. I would like to think, and I could be wrong, but I would like to think that by the time they got to the end of the plagues, that the very vast majority of the Israelites were woken up. And for those that weren't, well, the angel of death moment would definitely have been a big part of that, which is the last plague, because it says there was wailing all throughout Egypt, right? Because the firstborn had died. So it's going to get to a point, and the prophets have said today, that the angel of death is on the earth. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that means. Is it hanging around the earthquake zones? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. All I can say is that with the plagues, things intensified. Cracks formed in the dam. The knees started to shake on the camel before that last straw broke the camel's back. We're building to something, and slowly people are starting to get themselves ready. So what are you doing? What are you doing in that situation? Right? What are you doing? How are you preparing yourself if you're an Israelite in brick making Egypt, right? What are you doing? Well, I mean, if it's me, I'm probably packing a bag because, I mean, it seems like something's fixing to go down. As far as I know, this spanned, when I read it originally, I always took it to mean like it happened like in quick succession, but the more I've read that story, and especially reading in Jasher, it looks like it was actually spread out over a longer period of time. I don't know if it was over a year. I can't remember exactly how long it took, but it was a period of time. Just like we have been going through this awakening process over a period of time. It didn't happen all at once. It was building, 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 and then all at once. It's that one last thing, that one last drop that finally causes it to break, the one last straw that finally causes the camel's back to break, right? It's the one thing that is just on the kind of on the cusp or on the fringe of everything else that's happened, right? And so if I'm paying attention, I'm making sure that I'm trying to position myself so that I've got a good spot in the line that's fixing to go out. So how do you prepare? Well, it's probably a good idea to go through and to start kind of like focusing on things that are needless. Like, what is it that I actually need versus what can I do without? And it's tough because, like, for somebody like me, I love all my guitars. I love all this stuff. But you know what I've noticed over the last 2, 3, 4 months? I've become less and less attached to this stuff. And it used to be my life. Like, I mean, writing music and releasing music and performing, man, being on stage, it's like my life. And it's just been like whatever lately. And I've seen that a lot on the internet. And some people call it, well, it's awakening symptoms. Well, maybe it is awakening symptoms. I don't know. It's what do they call it? No, not awakening symptoms. What's the ascension symptoms? That's what they say. I don't know. Who am I to say, right? We live in a weird world. I mean, the whole point of this podcast is that we're in this weird spot that we can't define, right? And so if that's the case, and we do have ascension symptoms, even the 17th letter of the alphabet, I mean, says, like one of the last posts said and talked about ascension, like we're having this ascension moment. I don't know. I mean, how do you quantify or qualify that? It's really weird. So what am I doing to prepare? I think the best way is to just make sure that you're prioritizing your life. What is it that you need versus what is it that you want? And then understanding that if you can prepare, you should prepare. How did Jesus go through and feed the masses? He assessed the situation. He had some loaves and some fishes, and it was just a little bit, but from that little bit, he was able to go through and to do a big miracle. I think that's the big thing that you need to assess. What do I have? Maybe you're better off than what you think, because there's a lot of people, I see them in the comment section, a lot of the people I follow, because again, I'm a finance guy, so I follow a lot of these channels, and a lot of these are, you need to buy gold and silver, and you need to make sure you're doing this, and a lot of people are like, man, I can't afford it. I'm like paycheck to paycheck, and it's like that one of the guys I follow is like, well, just, go buy an ounce. That's $66 or $70 to go buy an ounce. Well, a couple of years ago, it was like $25, And so, but a lot of people are in a position where they can't do that. $70 is, a tank of gas and some groceries maybe. So what can you do with what you've got? That's where I would start. Because here's the other thing. Remember after the last plague, when they were leaving, they looted Egypt. There was a wealth transfer. And here's the other thing that it says. There was not one feeble among them. Right. And the prophets are then using that today to go through and to say that, well, that means that there's a great wealth and a great health transfer that's coming. So that's the other thing, too. I think a lot of people tend to be in a position of wanting to over-prepare. I don't know if there is such a thing, but I think that you just need to understand that the biggest part of all of it is to do with it what you can. If you can have a couple of weeks worth of food and water, maybe a month, and then maybe have a little extra for your neighbors that may not be prepared. Because if the grid goes down, or if a volcano goes off, or an earthquake hits in your area and things go down for a little bit, I mean, regardless whether that's the event or not the event, it's good to be prepared, right? But don't stress out about it. I think that's the biggest thing out of all of it is the stress. My wife sent me a video this morning, and I'm actually going to end up doing a show on it. If I thought about it, I was just listening to the earthquake stuff and thought, man, we need to get on and talk about it. But the video is really profound, and from my memory, it says they taught us how to pray incorrectly, because they taught us how to beg rather than to basically move as if, right? I think that's ultimately what Jesus was getting at. Like I said, I'm going to do a show eventually on that topic specifically, and I'll feature that video. But they did, man. They taught us how to beg through money, through school system, everything. They taught us to be subservient and to put ourselves in a position to where there's always an intermediary or a middleman between what it is that we actually want. You know, like I want to buy that jet ski or whatever. Well, that jet ski costs X amount of dollars. So I'm going to work and sacrifice my time for the dollar for the thing that I actually want. Versus, so it's so weird because you're actually sacrificing your time for something that can be used to then go through and to get the thing you want versus just getting the thing you want. And I get that's the way that this world is set up and works. I totally understand that. I'm not trying to go through and live in like some other world where that doesn't exist that way. I get it. But think about what that does to you psychologically. You're never, ever working for what you want. You're working for the thing that separates you from what you want, right? Like you're working for the money because the money is really what's separating you from what it is that you actually want, right? How many people live in fear by not having enough money? How many people live in fear by not being able to secure, like everything boils down to money in this world, everything. And again, we talked about this before. It's an equation. Time equals money, right? And in our time is what's so important. I was listening to something today this morning while I was drinking my coffee, and it was talking about the Ethiopian Bible and the latest version of Grok that came out. I should probably do a show on this. I was like blown away. It was super fascinating. But he was talking about how in the Ethiopian Bible, which contains a lot of the apocryphal texts, it was talking about, and I forget the name of the book. It was talking about Jesus and the resurrection, and that the 3 days that occurred, they used Grok basically to go back through this Bible and like pull it all out and put it together. Like I said, I'll do a video on this because I'm not going to do it justice, but I think this is kind of pertinent to where we're at. So Jesus went through, and it tells a very different story of the 3 days, right? And they basically led up to the stone being rolled away was really him getting to the end and defeating hell. Like he was fighting it. And he said the worst part about it, this is according to Jesus and the apocryphal text here, the worst part about it was not the fire and the brimstone that we all hear about every week at church, you know. It was that he saw people that were frozen, like frozen in time, like they were just there, frozen. But only then were they given understanding, but they couldn't do anything about it. So they would see all of the mistakes in their life, all of the times they withheld love from people, the times that they missed opportunities or you know, to do what it was that they were called to do. And they didn't understand it at the time, but now they have an understanding, but they are completely frozen and they're unable to do anything about it. And he said that was hell. And I was like, oh my gosh, man. The very thought of that is just, it is so sobering to me, because at the end of the day, it really forces you to think about this. It's like, if we had the understanding, what would we do differently? Because our time here is what we are given, right? But we sacrifice that time for money. And then we give money all of the power. And we let money define us and put us in a little box. When in reality, when you leave, you can't take it with you. None of this crap we can take with us. None of it, right? So we sacrifice everything. And it's not until afterwards, they say hindsight's 20/20, right? But you're left with understanding that you can then do nothing about. And I just think that if we allow ourselves to live in fear about whatever this thing is, whatever this big event is coming with the earthquakes and everything else, the 2 E's, earthquake and eruptions, right? We're going to position ourselves poorly, right? I would just say, and I think probably most of you listening here today are still in that position to where it's like you're starting to wake up, or you are woken up, and there are other people around you. It's tough, man. It's a tough one, because on the one hand, it's like you don't want anyone to, you want to go shake everybody awake. But at this stage of the game, you're getting into the 6th, 7th plague, and they're still hanging in there. Sometimes I think, especially as you're getting close to the end of the ride on the roller coaster, it's best to just hang on, and trust that the angel of the Lord is going to get him when the screams of Egypt start erupting. I mean, that's at the end of the day, all we can do is pray for him at some point, and to lead by example, because, a lot of times just stepping out and being that first person, or positioning yourself in line. It's like, why are you packing a bag? What are you packing a bag for? I see you're buying a lot of cans and water. Why are you buying cans and water? Like, what's going on? I mean, sometimes being that example can be that, right? But again, we don't have that understanding, I think, a lot of times when we're caught up in the soup, right? And so when we don't have that understanding, we're not positioning ourselves to be able to make the right moves, right? Kind of like those people that are frozen in stasis. I kind of took that to mean like the Matrix, or like the NPCs. Because Jesus, actually, he said there too, Jesus said, again, this is all in that apocryphal text. I'm going to do a whole show on it because it was so good. But he was saying in those texts that he's like, look, the worst part was actually the ones that were still alive, where they were so engrossed in what was going on in the day-to-day that the spark within them was starting to fade, right? Like, they were becoming, as we would define it, NPCs, right? Right. I mean, we've done several shows on that now. And so I'm going to do it. I'll do a show on that video later this week, because I think it's important for us to be able to kind of tackle that concept. And it challenges some of your kind of paradigms, which I think is important. Because right now, if you go to church on Sunday, like this church that I play guitar for a few times, and I had to quit going, I'm not going to point fingers and say church is bad. I'm going to say that. I've been in church my whole life, almost became a pastor, true story. And I was playing guitar for this church. And again, I don't know the context. I just saw the Facebook post, but it made me like sick to my stomach. But they're doing like movies. They're doing movies at church, and they're doing a whole thing on The Devil Wears Prada is what they're doing. And they're going to work their sermons in and all around it because they got the new movie coming out or whatever. And I'm just like, look, I'm not going to point fingers and say whatever, but it made me like sick to look at it. It's like the churches have gotten to the point where they're pandering so much to their audience, right? Have gotten, in a lot of ways, so far away from the gospel. They've gotten so far away from the message that it's like, what? I don't know, man. That same church, and this is the straw that broke the camel's back for me, was the pastor got up in the pulpit one day, and I just got finished playing the first service and went to go sit down, and he got up there, and he was doing a sermon, and he was talking about figures in the Bible, and one of them was, he got up there and said, well, Gideon is a coward. I was like, dude, which version of the Bible did you read? Pretty sure they said warrior. I don't know. Maybe I read that wrong, but I'm pretty sure he didn't say coward. But suffice it to say is I think you have to be in a position to where you're using your discernment, and you have to be in a position to where you're ready to be ready. And all I can say is the prophets are heating up today. I know Kim Klement is no longer with us, but we're seeing more and more of his prophecies really start to, kind of heat up, literally and figuratively, with a lot of this stuff. And I just think that we're building, man. I feel it in my soul. I really hope so. I'm not super anxious to go back into the lion's den, wearing the proverbial rich man's noose. I swore I would never do it again. And you can say, well, Jones, you're just sacrificing your time for money. Your spark's going to go out. You're going to be an NPC. And I was like, look, man, I totally get it. But at the end of the day, again, they'll be eating and drinking and giving in marriage. I mean, I'm going to try to stock my ark the best way that I can until God seals me in. I don't know when the big guy's plans are to move. I don't know. But I'm going to just keep moving along. With this podcast, you know what he told me? And I tried to start a podcast a couple of times, and I've had a few different shows and names and stuff, and they always just kind of petered out. And I was like, what am I even going to talk about, man? And he just told me, he's like, just start talking. He's like, just start talking. And these may be the ramblings of a madman, and maybe nobody will listen. I don't know. I'm starting to get more DMs and comments, and I know that this is, I'm still early on in the podcasting journey. If you ever listen to early Joe Rogan podcasts, they are gold. They're worth their weight in gold. Because it's interesting. I've listened to a lot of podcasters at the beginning too, to where it's like they start and they're just trying to get their legs underneath them, and then they grow and they finally find their stride and their cadence and the way they work. And I think, especially in this time that we're living, so many people have been living lives that are so far away from where they're supposed to be that they don't even know how to walk anymore. I was just talking to my wife on the way back from this interview. Again, like I said, a 2.5 hour drive there and back, so 5 hours round trip. I was just talking to her about it, and it's like, so many people have, for the sake of just keeping their head above water, had to have gone in to do things that are completely distant or non-resonant with who they are. They've had to put on a completely different set of skills, and they may be good at it. I'm a musician, and I'm in a lot of ways, it's like I'm a storyteller. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I've had to put on the suit and tie and go be a broker, or go be a finance guy. And here's the thing. I was good at it. I am good at it, but I don't like it. You know what I mean? It's not something that I enjoy. My mom was a nurse, or is a nurse, for like 40, 50 years. She's been doing it a long time. She's good at it. She's really good at it, but she doesn't like it. You know what I'm saying? Like, she likes being able to work with people, and she's a teacher. My mom is a teacher. And so because she has that finesse, she's an outstanding teacher. And she's a storyteller, but she's so good at teaching. And she's been able to incorporate some of that in there, but we've all been forced into these different roles to the point to where we don't even know. It's like going back to the Israelites. It's like there was portions of them that were awake. As a matter of fact, if you go back to watch, here, I'll just pull it up real quick, because Moses actually alludes to this. Hold on. 32. Let me see. I'm just going to pull this up. I believe this is the right spot. Yeah, this is Deuteronomy 32. It's Moses, like right before Moses dies. He says, remember the days of old. This is starting in verse 7. He says, remember the days of old. Consider the generations long past. Ask your father, and he will tell you. Your elders, and they will explain to you. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided all mankind, he set up boundaries for the peoples according to their number of the sons of Israel. For the Lord's portion, for the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob his allotted inheritance. Okay, so again, even Moses is like, look, remember the days of old. Consider the generations long past. Ask your father, and he will tell you. Your elders, and they will explain to you. Well, what's he talking about there? That is a whole podcast in and of itself. There's a lot in those 3 verses right there. Just a lot in those 3 verses. But I find it fascinating because I think it's an archetype. I think it you can expand that out to much larger than what it actually is. Because I think at the end of the day, you have the Israelites. It's because it's human nature. There's so many of us that are keyed in and clued in on a lot of different things. But if you're paying attention, you're going to end up picking up. The more you see, it's like the more you seek out God, the more he'll draw you in, right? Because he wants that relationship. But the more that you're digging into something or showing interest in something, it's going to pull you in, and you're going to attract those people that are wanting to help and guide you on that. And with all of this, with the more, I mean, I kind of started waking up around 9/11, but then, got busy with life and family and kids and everything else. And then when 2020 happened, it was like, oh man, it was like fire hose to the face. And then it's just been one flashbang after another, to the point where it's like I couldn't go back to sleep right now if I wanted to. Although sometimes we did that podcast a few episodes ago about taking the blue pill versus the red pill. And it's like, man, sometimes, really ignorance is bliss, right? Because you don't have to think and or worry about any of that stuff. And believe me, I fantasize about the blue pill. It's like I was praying on the way back from the job interview. I was like, man, God, it's like it would be so much easier. It would be so much easier to just like sit on the beach or, just have like a run-of-the-mill job and not have to worry about this stuff. And he's like, yeah. He's like, but you'd hate it. He's like, you'd hate it. Because I think a lot of times the best things in life worth having are going to require a fight and are going to require turmoil. Again, I truly believe in some capacity that I am a storyteller. I'm a lyricist. It's like I can't help it. I've been a DJ. It's like literally God shoved a microphone in my face at 15 years old. I don't even know what I'm talking about necessarily, but it's like I've got to be able to get it out somehow. And eventually this show will find its footing and it will find its place. I understand that it's really a lot of rambling at this point. But you can't build a foundation unless you pour the concrete, and you got to let the concrete set. That's just the way it works. That's the way any of this works. That's the way music works. That's how you start writing a song. But you can't tell a good story. You can't tell a good story unless you have something to talk about. It's like that. What is it? It's out of that movie. It's if you want to tell a story, you got to I forget how it goes. The other way to put it would be like if you want to, you got to suffer if you want to sing the blues. Like he brought to my attention. He's like, think about Moses, man. He's like, Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. I mean, he was one of the OG storytellers in the grand scheme of things. And look at what Moses went through. And if you think that's all of it, read Jasher and Jubilees. It'll give you even more. Like I said, Moses was king for a while. Did you know that? He was king out in the desert. Yeah, read Jasher. It'll blow your mind. Anyway, so that's kind of ramblings for the day. Like I said, I just want to say thank you and appreciate everyone that is out there still listening. I know that in the early days of these podcasts, that it is probably going to be a little bit more kind of disjointed. And part of it's a little less organized today than it would otherwise be, just simply because, I've been out on the road all day in business and finance mode. But structure is starting to come, and we will get closer and closer as soon as, assuming that is to say, that the big event doesn't happen prior to this point. So as long as the sun still comes up tomorrow and the earth is still on its foundations, we'll be there. I'm going to do a video on the that apocryphal text, the Ethiopian text. It is incredibly cool. It'll be a lot more organized today than just ramblings of a madman. But it is it really kind of blew my mind at the amount of kind of depth. And it how sometimes something will resonate with you, and it's like I know that I should need more substance than this, but it just resonates. It hits a nerve somewhere. It resonates with me on a deep level that I can't even quantify. It was kind of one of those things with me, which is why I got to dig into it and do some more research on it, because I'm just, I'm kind of a sucker for that sort of thing. So anyway, thank you so much for listening today. If you're still listening, I just appreciate it. I know, like I said, today was a rambling sort of a day. I do hope and am working on going through and getting on some guests for the show as we're building this out a little bit. A buddy of mine and I have been discussing for the last couple of years this concept of us living right now in the little season and the millennial reign having already occurred. So I'd actually like to get him on to discuss that more. That school of thought is exploding, and if you haven't tugged at that thread, just Google Satan's little season, and you'll get everything you ever wanted to know and more. But I would like to kind of discuss that and put my own spin on it as well. I say my own spin, just my own take of, what I think is going on there as well. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for the DMs. Thank you for the comments. Even the guy that said, I think that we're all done with God. Well, buddy, I just know that I was praying for you today, and just know that God's not done with you. How about that? All right. We are definitely caught between worlds. It's a really crazy and chaotic time, but we're all going to make it through on the other side, God willing. Have a great rest of your day. God bless you. This is the Reality Halfway House.